Hello, everyone. Welcome back. This is Keith Bailey, and I'm going to start a new segment here now that we're about 20 days, give or take, until the start of the football season. My last video was my cringe season predictions where I had the Rams and the Browns playing each other in the Super Bowl. Now, since then, a lot's happened. Players have gotten injured, players have added certain players. Tennessee added Julio Jones. I'm a Titans fan. I made that video before that addition. And now I'm going to revisit not the season predictions, but I'm going to do a floor and ceiling for every single NFL team. So if your favorite team if you think there should be a certain record attributed with your favorite team, this is the video you're going to want to watch. So we're going to start with the Buffalo Bills. Buffalo Bills went 13-3 last year. Fantastic year for them, and they have a doozy against Pittsburgh week 1. Now, I'm going to divide this into three things. One are what I call certain victories. Two are 50-50 matchups, and three are games that they will likely lose. This is all based on my opinion. So we'll start with Pittsburgh. This is a 50-50 game for them. At Miami is another 50-50. So Washington, they should win that. Houston, they should win that. So that's 2. And then this is probable L. We'll call this one a probable L at Kansas City. This one we'll call 50-50 against Tennessee. We got Miami here. That's another 50-50. Probable win, probable win. 50-50, probable win, probable win. We'll call this one an L. Probable win, probable win, probable win, probable win. Okay, so based on that, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So we'll give it a 1-game buffer. So I would say Buffalo's floor this year, we'll give Buffalo an 8-9 floor, and I'm going to go ahead and give them a 15-2 ceiling. That's a good stretch right there. Now, if you're asking me now what record I think would be not a good season for them, because obviously that'd be the ceiling. This is a Super Bowl contender. Buffalo could be they could be a team that wins the Super Bowl this year. That'll be my ultimate ceiling for them. But if we're just talking regular season, I would say 15-2. They're a very, very good football team. They're definitely going to make the playoffs. They are one of my playoff teams. And they could win the Super Bowl. 15-2 with 8-9 as your floor in case everything goes wrong for this team. If Josh Allen gets hurt, now all of these are barring injuries to quarterbacks, because if Josh Allen gets hurt, then their floor dips a lot below an 8-9 record. But assuming we're going to go ahead and say 8-9 for the floor, missing the playoffs, and ceiling is 15-2 Super Bowl champs. What to expect? I would expect a 12 or 13 win season for the Buffalo Bills. Now we're going to go do the next team. We got Miami. Look at their schedule here for a second. Okay. Miami's a questionable team. There's going to be a lot of 50-50 games. So I'm going to look at games I think they should win, and then we'll figure the rest out. So they should beat New England once. They should beat Jacksonville. They should beat Atlanta. They should beat Houston. They should beat the Jets. They should beat Carolina. They should beat the Jets again. And I already got the Patriots. So that's 7. So I'm going to go ahead and say Miami's floor is 7-10, missing the playoffs, obviously. I'm going to say that that's a good floor for them, 7-10. Their ceiling, I'm not going to have as high as the Bills. I'm going to put Miami's ceiling, the best they could do this year, I'm going to go ahead and say 12-5. That's if everything comes together. That's if Tua kills it. So I'm going to go 12-5 and a divisional round appearance. That is my best case scenario for the Miami Dolphins. If you're rooting for the Miami Dolphins and you go 12-5 or even 11-6, if you make it to the divisional round of the playoffs, that is a successful season under Brian Flores. So we'll go ahead and we'll call that what it is for Miami. 7-10 floor, missing the playoffs. 12-5 ceiling with a divisional round appearance. Next up, we're going to go with the Patriots. This is a tricky team. They have a rookie quarterback, so let's go off of assumed wins. They should beat the Jets. I'm going to go ahead and say once. I'm going to make the other Jets game 50-50 for them, only because I don't know what Patriots team to expect. So there's one. Houston should be a W. Carolina should be a W. Jacksonville should be a W. And I'm going to add Atlanta in there too as a 50-50 game because they have a lot of 50-50s. They should get one of them. So I'm going to have the Patriots floor, bottom out, worst case scenario, 5-12. That's if everything goes wrong for this team. 5-12, missing the playoffs. Your best case scenario for New England, I'm going to go 10-7 best case scenario. If everything comes together, if Mac Jones and Cam Newton do a good job this year, Cam Newton reclaims what he had a couple years ago, the defense comes together and returns to form, I'm going to say 10-7 best case scenario with a divisional round appearance. I'm going to give them that divisional round appearance because Bill Belichick, that's just what he is as a coach. He's very good. And now we're going to go to the last team in the AFC East, the New York Jets. Their schedule and them as a team, they're in rebuilding mode. So most of these are probable L's. You got a couple 50-50s mixed in there. So without going into it all that much, I'm going to go ahead and put them for a floor of 3-4. Floor, you know what? Let's go 2-15. 2-15 is the floor here for the Jets. That's if everything falls apart. That's if Saleh sucks as a head coach. If their rookie quarterback flops, Zach Wilson. 2-15 is the floor. Missing the playoffs. Your ceiling for the Jets, looking at the schedule, they do play a last place schedule. That does involve games against Denver, Atlanta, Cincinnati, Houston, Philly, Jacksonville, a couple more 50-50s. I'm going to go 8-9 as the ceiling here. Still missing the playoffs. But if the Jets can go 8-9 or hell, even 7-10, I would consider that an extremely successful season and a big step forward for this organization that has been awful for the last decade. So we'll go 8-9 here as the ceiling for the Jets. Let's move on to another division. We'll go to the North, Baltimore Ravens. And let's see here. Ravens have been a perennial contender for the last couple of years. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I'm going to have the Ravens floor here at 8-9. That's if the whole league figures out Lamar Jackson, because they have a tough schedule this year. Both games against Pittsburgh won't be easy. Both games against Cleveland is not going to be easy. Indy, Miami, Green Bay, the Chargers, those are not easy games by any means. Kansas City, they got a tough schedule this year. So 8-9 is the floor here, and missing the playoffs. I'm going to go ahead and say their ceiling. They can win the Super Bowl. I would go ahead and say the ceiling for this team would be, I'll give it 14-3 with a Super Bowl win. That'll be the ceiling here for the Ravens. That would be a great season for them. Obviously, I mean, winning the Super Bowl would be a fantastic season. So let's go with that. Next up, we have Cincinnati. This one's an interesting one. We didn't get a lot of Joe Burrow last year, not as much as we wanted. So this is going to be a wide range here. Get ready for this. Cincinnati was very competitive with Joe Burrow starting last year. I mean, hell, they took out Tennessee. Man, their schedule is tough. Floor, I'm going to go 4-13 is the floor for Cincy. Looking at the schedule. Ceiling, I'm going to put 9-8 as a ceiling here with a playoff appearance as a wild card team, losing in the wild card round. So if Cincinnati can make the wild card round this season with a 9-8 record, that's best case scenario. So that'll be my ceiling for the Bengals. If everything falls right for them, they absolutely can make the playoffs. They're a big question mark right now because Joe Burrow, they had another high pick in the draft last year. This is a team that could put it all together this year and surprise some people. Ultimately, everything needs to fall right for that to happen. That's why there's a lot of question marks. Next up, we got Cleveland. Okay. For those of you that didn't see my last video, I have Cleveland going to the Super Bowl. Now, their best case scenario will be a Super Bowl win. And I'll go 14-3. They can absolutely win the Super Bowl with a team that they have and the coach that they have, the roster that they have, everything about it at least screams playoff contender, which is why I think the floor for Cleveland is 9-8. I think they're guaranteed a winning record. I really do, because they should beat Houston, they should beat Chicago, they should beat Minnesota, they should beat Denver, they should get Pittsburgh once, they should get Cincinnati once, they should beat Detroit. We're at 7. And they should get one of these 50-50s. There's the Bengals again. Yeah, I think their floor is 9-8. 9-8 with a wild card appearance. I'm that confident that Cleveland will at least make the playoffs this year. So floor 9-8, wild card. Ceiling 14-3, Super Bowl champion. Okay, Pittsburgh. Ben Roethlisberger has fallen off a cliff this year. They have a running game now. Harris should be a massive upgrade at running back for Pittsburgh. I realize I spent a lot of time on Buffalo, but I'm kind of doing this video on the fly, so I figured just taking wild guesses and just briefly skimming the schedule is probably best. That way this video doesn't turn into a 2-hour-long video. So without further ado, let's go with Pittsburgh here. Should beat Cincy, should beat Denver, should beat Detroit and Chicago, should beat Minnesota. Ooh, that's tough. I'm going to have Pittsburgh's floor, the Mike Tomlin effect, will go 6-11. I was going to say 5-12, but then I remember they have Mike Tomlin. So 6-11 is the worst case scenario for this team if everything falls apart. Best case scenario, I'll go 11-6 with a conference championship appearance. That's the Mike Tomlin effect for you. He's that good of a coach. This is a team that can really make the AFC Championship game. They could go on a run in the playoffs. I don't think they're going to go better than 11-6 during the regular season. But this is a team that could go on a run in the playoffs. So we'll go 11-6 with a conference championship game appearance as their best case scenario. Houston. Best case scenario, 7-10. That's if Watson plays for them. That's literally their best case scenario if Watson plays. If Watson does not play for this team this year, they bottom out. This is a team that can absolutely go winless, 0-17. I have to put that here as an option. I just have to. If Watson plays this year, then their worst case scenario goes from winless to 3-14. But this is a team that isn't making the playoffs this year. Going down a little more to Indianapolis. Now, Indianapolis' schedule is disgustingly difficult. I mean, you look at their first, you look at all the way up until the end of week 8. You're talking Seattle, Los Angeles, Tennessee, Miami, Baltimore. And then Houston is the first game on their schedule in middle October that they should win. And even then, these two games are extremely difficult. They only have one, I would say, guaranteed victory and a lot of 50-50s or probable L's. And then their schedule eases up. They get the Jets, they get the Jags, and then they're slammed again with the Bills and Bucks. Then they get Houston, and then their schedule eases up here a little bit. This isn't much of an easy game, but it's easier. Their floor, 5-12. That's if they lose against all of these big boys. If they come out and they lose 0-1, 0-2, 0-3, 0-4, 0-5, 1-5, 1-6, 1-7. When you're 1-7, that could totally derail the rest of your year. And then we'll say 2-7, 3-7, 3-8, 3-9, 4-9, 4-10, 4-11, 4-12, 5-12. That's if because once you go 1-7 as a team, sometimes you just bottom out, and then you're not going to play with as much enthusiasm. If you're 1-7, we see it all the time. Hell, we saw it with the Texans last year. The expectations they had going in, only to be dealt Kansas City, Baltimore, and Pittsburgh in the first 3 weeks to go 0-3. And that stretch completely threw off the rest of their season, even though they were competitive in a lot of games. So 5-12 is the floor. Their ceiling here, conference championship game appearance, and 11-6. That'll be my best case with a schedule like this. That'll be my best case scenario for them. Moving on. Jacksonville. Trevor Lawrence, the season is all about Trevor Lawrence for this team. So their best case, they can go 7-10. Fantastic season. Worst case, 2-15. That's as Trevor Lawrence bottoms out and is not nearly as good as people think he is, but I think he's good. And I think I'd be willing to bet that this team is closer to 7 wins this year than they are to 2. But either way, I still think they missed the playoffs. Tennessee. This is a team that is very reliant upon Derrick Henry. So if he goes down, I'm not saying the rest of their season goes down, but it becomes extremely difficult to win some of these 50-50 games. You look at their schedule. We should have a win and win. That's 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So I would say the floor here would be 7 and 10. If everything bottoms out, 7 and 10 should be the floor of this team with missing the playoffs. If the defense comes together and plays well and the offense plays well, this is a team you could absolutely see go 15-2 and win a Super Bowl. So I would say Super Bowl champs 15-2 as your best case scenario for Tennessee Titans 2021 with a 7-10 bottom out worst case scenario. A lot of the question marks here are going to be revolved around their defense. Because if their defense can at least be middling, this is a dangerous team. Going to the AFC West, Denver. Denver's a tricky team. They play the NFC East. I'm going to go ahead and say 9-8 with a wild card appearance would be their best case scenario. Worst case scenario, 3-14. Moving on to the Chiefs. Best case scenario, absolutely undefeated season, 17-0 Super Bowl champs. This team is fantastic, and they have been for a long time. And you have to put undefeated as a possibility here, regardless of who's on their schedule. I don't even need to look at their schedule to tell you that there's absolutely a best case scenario in a world where Kansas City goes undefeated and wins the Super Bowl. Their worst case scenario, 11-6. I think that's their worst case scenario, especially considering they play the NFC East. I mean, look at their schedule. Oh, their first 3 games are kind of difficult, but their first 5 are kind of difficult. Yeah, I mean, oof, actually. Yeah, they got some toughies here to start the season because they could lose here, they could lose here, they could lose here, they could lose here, here, and here. But more often than not, they get these 50-50s. They also get Green Bay, Dallas. You know what? I'm going to bump their worst case scenario down to a 9-8, only because I'm looking at their schedule and I'm seeing that it's a lot more difficult than I thought. So I'm going to pump the brakes there on Kansas City. I'm going to still say they absolutely can go undefeated. It's possible. But their floor is a little more than I thought. Their schedule is a lot more difficult than it looked. I just kind of assumed they play the NFC East, but then I saw the first place schedule they played. And they play the AFC North. So they're still going to make the playoffs, even if it's a wild card. That's still possible. Moving on. Vegas. This is a tricky team. This is a team that's gone 6-3 the last 2 years and has completely fizzled out. Worst case scenario is 4-13 if they completely fall apart and John Gruden flops more this year than he has in the past. Best case scenario, we'll go 10-7 with a wild card appearance. That would be a very successful season for Vegas. They have it in them. They beat Kansas City last year. They beat the Saints last year. They absolutely have it in them. The question is, can they pull it together? The Chargers. This is a popular sleeper pick by a lot of people. And you know what? With Herbert starting, I would say the floor for this team is 6-11. And I would say the ceiling for this team, I'm going to go ahead and say 13-4. 13-4 with a Super Bowl appearance. I will say appearance, not victory. They make the Super Bowl. I don't think they win the Super Bowl. But this is a team where if they put it together, I'm telling you, is dangerous. they could absolutely challenge the Chiefs for the division title, especially considering now their schedule is kind of hard to start as well. But this is a team I really think could go toe-to-toe for the division title with Kansas City. I think Kansas City fades away over the last part of the season, but I think it's within 2 or 3 games. I do. So we'll go ahead and we'll say that's the best case and worst case for the Chargers. Moving to the Cowboys. The Dak Prescott effect. If Prescott's healthy and this defense has been worked on, the best case scenario for Dallas, I'm going to go ahead and say it, conference championship game. This is a dangerous, dangerous team. I don't care what people say. I don't care what the pundits and the Cowboys haters and Cowboys like, oh, Dallas is always in the top. Every year, people expect them to do well and they fall flat on their face. Yeah, you're right. They do. But I'm telling you, the talent is here on this Dallas team, where if this team puts it all together this year, they can absolutely make it to the conference championship game and wreak havoc all season long. You can't deny that. They absolutely can. That offense is scary. That defense was revamped. They can. They really can put it together. Worst case scenario, bottom out. 6-11. But the NFC East will not have a team with a losing record make the playoffs this year. Okay, moving on to Giants. I'm going to say 10-7 would be their best case scenario. 10-7 with a wild card appearance. It's doable. Bottom out, 3-14. That's if Daniel Jones flops with a capital F, but the Giants defense is very, very good and should keep them in a lot of games this year. So we'll go ahead and we'll say 3-14 is the worst case scenario. 10-7 is the best. Philly. Pretty difficult schedule here. I mean, I know they get the Jets. Ooh, that's about it. Detroit, maybe. Worst case is 2-15. I would say best case 8-9. That's if they get a lot of lucky breaks. That's because they play in the NFC East as well. Those Giants and Washington games are more so toss-ups. Maybe not Washington, but the Giants, I would say yes. But yeah, I would go 8-9 as best case scenario. If everything comes together and Jalen Hurts is a star for them, 8-9. Division winners, wild card appearance. I said that I really didn't think that I really didn't think that the NFC East would send a team with a losing record to the playoffs. But I have to consider that as a possibility still with how bad this division is. I got to put 8-9 division champs as the best case scenario here for Philadelphia. That's if the other 3 teams bottom out. That's if Dallas reaches their worst case scenario. Okay. Washington. This defense is nasty. And I would put their best case scenario at 12-5 with a conference championship appearance. I would go there. I think Ryan Fitzpatrick on this team. When was the last time you saw Fitzpatrick have any kind of defense? And this much talent around him on offense. The Jets come to mind, but the Jets didn't really have a stellar defense, not nearly a defense of this caliber back in 2015. So Washington could put it all together this year, and they could make the conference championship and go 12-5 and win the NFC East and even have maybe a high seed. Their worst case scenario, if everything bottoms out, 6-11. All right. We go to the Bears. Andy Dalton or Justin Fields, whoever starts for them. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and say 5-12 would be the worst case scenario. You got to put the fact that the Bears defense is good. But if this offense falls apart, I think 5-12 is their floor here. Ceiling, we'll go, we'll give him some respect. We'll go, if Andy Dalton revitalizes his career or Justin Fields comes in and just lights it up as a rookie, I'll go 11-6 as a ceiling with a divisional round appearance. They could do it. Detroit. This is an interesting one. Unlike a lot of people, I think Detroit might be better this year than people think. Now, are they going to make the playoffs? I doubt it. But I'm going to go ahead and say their best case scenario, 9-8. You heard it here. 3-14 is the worst case. 9-8 wild card appearance. I would say their best case scenario. And that's because I think Dan Campbell may not be as crazy as people think. I have read a lot on this guy, and it's a very unconventional way of coaching, but sometimes unconventional ways of coaching can work. So we'll see what happens with Dan Campbell. But Jared Goff is not a slouch at quarterback, guys. He's not awful. They have wide receivers. Their defense is a big question mark. And didn't they draft an offensive lineman for the first pick in the draft? Was that a thing? Who did they draft? First round pick, Detroit Lions. I'm whipping out the phone. Lions, 2021. First round pick. No, not first full game. First round pick. They selected, I think, offensive tackle. Yep, there it is. They're building right, I think, this time. They're drafting an offensive lineman with the first pick. They're not going for a skill position guy. I think this is a team that's going to rebuild, and I think they aim to rebuild correctly. So we'll go 9-8 as the best case scenario for Detroit, and 3-14 worst. Green Bay. Aaron Rodgers is back officially. 15-2, Super Bowl champs. Best case scenario for this team. They can absolutely win the Super Bowl. And I don't think there's a question that they can win the Super Bowl. I'm going to go ahead and say worst case scenario, 8-9. That's if ownership explodes. That's if Aaron Rodgers explodes and gets traded, or some drama happens and everything falls apart for Green Bay. 8-9, worst case scenario. Do I think it's going to happen? No, but I think it's a possibility. And Minnesota. Listen, Kirk Cousins is not nearly as bad a QB as people make him out to be. I don't think he is. He's good. He's not top 10, but he's good. So I'm going to go ahead and say their best case scenario is a divisional round appearance with a 12-5 record. If everything comes together, Mike Zimmer is a very good coach. Worst case scenario, 6-11. Bottom out. Kirk's last season in Minnesota completely flops. Defense is awful. So worst case scenario, 6-11. Best case scenario, 12-5, making a divisional round appearance. Okay, Atlanta. I have a soft spot for Atlanta because of their coach, Tennessee's former offensive coordinator, Arthur Smith. With Matt Ryan, this team always has a chance. They blew a lot of games last year. People fail to realize Atlanta blew a lot of games. A lot of these 50-50 games that they had went the other way. That's why they ended up with the record they did. So in response to that, I gotta go ahead and say Atlanta's best case scenario here. I'm gonna say it. They could absolutely go like 11-6 and make it to the divisional round of the playoffs. They really can. I mean, you look at their schedule last year. How many 50-50 games did they lose last year? Let's find out. Falcons 2020 schedule. Ready for this? See more. Okay. They absolutely could have beaten. Well, they lost to the Seahawks week 1. How many games did they win? They won 1, 2, 3, 4. 4-12. Okay. Now let's look at here. 4-12 last year. Could have been 5-11 if they actually hung on to beat the Cowboys. Could have been 6-10 if they hung on to beat the Bears. Could have been 7-9 if they hung on to beat the Panthers. Could have been 8-8 if they held on to beat the Lions. If they held on to beat the Chargers, it could have been 9-7. They had a lead against the Bucks. That could have been 10-6, and they had a lead against the Chiefs. That could have been 11-5. There were so many 50-50 games that they blew last year. You have to put the option of them winning those games at the end of it. They're basically like the Chargers of the NFC, because the Chargers started learning to win these close games last year, and Atlanta was still losing them. So you have to measure it properly. So 11-6 with the divisional round appearances, Atlanta's best case scenario. Worst case scenario, I don't know if I said it wrong. I'll go ahead and I'll say 4-13. That's if they bottom out. Okay, moving on to Carolina. This is an interesting one. No one's talking about this team right now. Nobody, because there's a lot of unknowns when you think about Carolina. One of them, you don't know how good the Saints are going to be. 2, the fact that they have Sam Darnold now in a completely different team, completely different system, pretty decent wide receivers. We'll see what happens. We'll see what happens early. But they play the Jets, they play Houston, they play the Eagles, the Vikings, the Giants, the Falcons, Patriots, Falcons again. And then their schedule gets difficult here. The last 4 games are tough. But this is a team that can absolutely go 9-8 and sneak into a wild card spot. Worst case scenario, Sam Darnold sucks 3-14. That's Carolina for you. And now we go to New Orleans. New Orleans, this is wide. 3-14 is the worst case scenario. 11-6 is the best case scenario. This is probably the widest window I have, only because I have no idea what to expect now that Drew Brees is no longer a Saint. I don't know how Jameis Winston's going to do, or Taysom Hill, whoever starts. It's a big question mark with this team right now. This team could go either way. They could be really good and surprise some people. They could be really, really average, or they could shit the bed. There's a lot that this team could do. So we have to put a wild card spot as a possibility for the Saints. Hell, maybe even divisional. Tampa, best case scenario, 15-2 Super Bowl champs. They can repeat. They won it again. They're returning all their starters. They absolutely can win the Super Bowl again. It's not even a question. Worst case scenario is Tom Brady falls off that alleged cliff that people keep predicting every single year. And they go 9-8 and sneak into a wild card spot. That would be their worst case scenario. But this team can absolutely win the Super Bowl again. I don't think there's a question or a conversation that needs to be had. Now we get to the last division, the most fun division and the most competitive division. Arizona, best case, 12-5 with a conference championship appearance. Kyler Murray steps up, and with the additions on offense and J.J. Watt, their defense could be stout. This is a team that could make a lot more noise than people think. People forget this is a team that missed the playoffs because of a tiebreaker. They could have given the Saints a much better battle than the Bears could have last year in the playoffs. So we'll go ahead, and they started hot last year and then they cooled down. I don't know why, but they cooled down. So 12-5, conference championship is their best case scenario. Worst case scenario, 7-10, miss the playoffs. Los Angeles, best case scenario, Super Bowl champs, 15-2 record. I said this in my last video. The fact that this team has Matthew Stafford is not being talked about enough. It just isn't. Matthew Stafford in Detroit, he was the reason that team was relevant when they were average. Those average seasons Detroit had when they were going 7-9, 8-8, 9-7. If they didn't have Stafford there, these would have been 4-12 seasons. And he never had the 1 year he had a defense in Detroit that was actually top 10. They went 11-5 and made the playoffs, or 9-7. It was one of the two, but they made the playoffs. And now you put Matthew Stafford on last year's #1 ranked defense, a team with Sean McVay as head coach, and Sean McVay's an offensive mind, and their defense was #1 in the league. Jared Goff held this team back last year, and hell, the Rams beat the Seahawks with an injured Jared Goff in the playoffs. It was either Jared Goff or that other kid that they started, but the defense won them that game against Seattle. It didn't matter who you threw in there at quarterback. It didn't. Now you have Stafford there. Oh, yeah. 15-2, best case scenario, winning the Super Bowl. Worst case scenario, still making the playoffs, 9-8, wild card. San Francisco. Best case scenario, I'll say Super Bowl appearance. This team, 2 of the last 3 years, has been plagued by injury. They could go 14-3 and make the Super Bowl this year. It's everything comes together for them. That could be what happens. But I got to put the worst case scenario here at 6-11 because listen, the worst case scenario has played out. This is a team. There has not been a middle with this team over the last 3 years. It's either been the best case scenario or the worst case scenario. Nothing in between. The 49ers 3 years ago had their worst case scenario as Jimmy Garoppolo's first year as starter when they bottomed out. The year after that, they went to the Super Bowl. Best case scenario. Last year, worst case scenario, missed the playoffs, won what, 6 games? Worst case scenario for them played out last year. If we made this video last year, my worst case scenario for San Francisco would have been probably what happened last year. So there's no in the middle with these, which is why you have such a wide range here. But this team could either be fantastic or bottom out. We've seen it happen on either side of the spectrum the last 3 years. And last but not least, the Seattle Seahawks. Best case scenario, winning the Super Bowl. Anytime you have Russell Wilson, you got to put that as a possibility. He's got some help now on the offensive line. Maybe he won't be running for his life as often. The whole Russell Wilson trade scare finally woke the Seahawks up and said, okay, maybe we should get him some protection. Defense should be decent. 14-3, Super Bowl champs, best case scenario. Worst case scenario, with Russell Wilson, 8-9, barely missing the playoffs. But Russell Wilson doesn't have losing seasons. So based on my analysis, the Bills, the Ravens, the Browns, the Titans, the Chiefs, I think those are your, I think one of those 5 teams will be in the Super Bowl. It'll either be, I'll say it again, Kansas City, Tennessee, Cleveland, Baltimore, Buffalo. One of those 5 teams will be in the Super Bowl on the AFC side. The NFC side. NFC side, I am going to go Green Bay, Tampa, the Rams, Seahawks, or I mean, hell, I'll throw Dallas in there. One of those 5 teams will be your Super Bowl contender on the NFC side. So I think there's 10 teams that have Super Bowl shot this year. Well, everyone's got a Super Bowl shot, but you know what I mean. And for those that don't, your best case scenarios come really close. We're talking Indianapolis comes close. The Chargers come close. The Cardinals and Niners come close. Washington comes close. There's close teams, but we'll see what happens. But anyway, that's my floor and ceiling analysis for the 2021 NFL season. I can't wait for the season to start. And I hope you guys all have an awesome day, and I'll see you guys next time.